What is going on, everybody out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to this brand new JJ's One Man Podcast. Oh my God, I got 2 episodes in the same week. It's crazy out here. I'm wondering what's going on. Well, let me tell you what's going on. The Game Awards just announced their nominations for the Game Awards 2023. All the categories, all the games that got nominated. Now we know what's up, and now it's time to talk predictions. I simmered on it just for a little while, and I got a lot to say. You hear me? I got a lot to say about these nominations, let alone everything going on surrounding the nominations. If you've been living underneath a rock or you haven't really been checking out what's been going on with the Game Awards or the conversation about them on social media, you're going to have a lot to listen to on here because there's a lot to get into with these games. That's all this episode's really going to be about, so I don't mind putting out a second episode this week. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the conversation here. Feel free to leave a comment down below in the comment section. Leave a like, of course, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. What are you doing? Show some love. Show some love to the channel. There's a lot of great content on here. Uploaded a brand new video as of yesterday when I was recording this. A little Star Wars game on the Game Boy Advance. Decided to play that, but now we got to talk the Game Awards. We got to talk games. We got to talk the games industry. We got to talk all this stuff. Now, the Game Awards had their stream with Jeff Keighley. Love Jeff Keighley. He got a chance to talk about all the nominations for every single category that they announced at the Game Awards. Now, I am going to breeze through a couple of them because there's not really much to say about some of these categories, but then there are ones that I definitely have a lot more to say and a lot more stuff to get into. So let's get started. So I'm looking at the website now for the Game Awards 2023. They have all their categories listed out. You could actually start voting on them to kind of give the fan vote for whatever games that you want to see actually win or what you feel is the best in that category. So we got stuff like best esports events. They have a couple different things in here. For me, out of all the different events in here, the only one I really know much about is EVO. I'm always going to vote for something like that for EVO because it's the biggest fighting game competition in the entire industry, I would say. And some of these other events might be bigger for their respective games, but for me, I think EVO is really the one that people know. Best esports coach, if the website could load, there we go. Esports coach, don't really care about much of this stuff because I don't know enough about these people, don't know enough about what they do. Same thing with best esports team, best esports athletes, not really something that I really could comment on. But best esports game, I can though, because for the most part, I do know most of these games, or at least know a little bit or enough about the communities to speak on it. I mean, we got games like Counter-Strike 2, we got Dota 2, League of Legends, PUBG Mobile, and Valorant. If I had to choose which one is probably going to win, if I had a choice on here, I'm probably going to say Valorant. And the only reason why I say Valorant is because of how big it is and how many people I see and people I know within the industry that play that game. Either competitively or non-competitively. I'm pretty sure like League of Legends, Dota 2, especially Counter-Strike 2 as well, have huge scenes. I don't know so much about PUBG Mobile. I know PUBG is a big deal, but as far as competition's concerned, I'm not so sure. But I would have to pick Valorant in that regard. So we also got Content Creator of the Year. I hardly know much about many of these people. None of these people I watch. None of these people I'm a fan of. It's crazy because every time we go to the awards and we see this type of category pop up, it's always these individuals that have apparently huge followings, but nobody I know knows who these people are, which is hilarious. But either way, got not much to say about that. If you're a fan of any of those people, you're probably going to vote for the one that you watch the most. So now we get to the actual games that we can start speaking on. This is when I need to have the extra big cup of coffee because this is when things are going to get ridiculous, right? Our first category that we have here, most anticipated game. So the most anticipated game for 2024, or at least that's going to be coming out 2024 and afterwards. We got some big games in here, and this one's going to be tough, right? We got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, big game. Hades 2, big game. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, apparently a big game. Star Wars Outlaws, you know it's a big game. And Tekken 8, another one you know is a big game. Now, the reason why this is tough is because I'm excited about all these games, with maybe the exception of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I don't even know why that's doing what that's doing there. Seems more like, Yakuza or Like a Dragon had more conversation recently in the last week because of Young Ye's whole thing more than anything else. I would assume like there would be much more other games that are like bigger, but maybe this is only games that we know are confirmed to be coming out next year. That I could totally understand. But for me personally, if I had to choose a winner here, I would have to say Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to win this. As much as I love Star Wars, everybody here knows I cannot wait to play Star Wars Outlaws. I am ready for for that game. I cannot wait to start talking about that game, talking to the people that I need to talk to about playing Star Wars Outlaws. But out of this list here, even though I love Tekken 8 and I love Hades, and I definitely want to see Hades too, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to win this category. Without question. It's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's the sequel to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, what more do I have to say? Like that's probably going to win that category. So now we go to something called Best Adaptation. Now, according to Jeff, shout outs to Jeff Keighley, this is a new category that's going to be talking more about or getting into adaptations of games into other media. So movies, TV shows, etc. And we have some big ones in here, and it seems a little bit more obvious of which one's going to win this one. So the nominations they got: Castlevania Nocturne, Gran Turismo, The Last of Us on HBO, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Twisted Metal on Peacock. Gran Turismo is the movie from Sony Pictures, and Castlevania Nocturne is the anime for, that was on Netflix. So out of these picks here, personally for me, the one that's going to win is going to be The Last of Us. Even though I think there is a very strong case that the Super Mario Brothers movie should win this, because it was probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest movie for our industry to come out this year, straight up. The thing is that The Last of Us has a much more bigger fan base amongst the people that are voting for the Game Awards, and I think that The Last of Us, as far as impact, probably did a lot more stuff for a specific crowd of people than the Super Mario Brothers movie did. And I know it's crazy to say that, because I would think, and I think many of you listening to this now would think, the Super Mario Brothers movie is probably a much bigger deal globally compared to The Last of Us. But keep in mind who we have voting on these awards and where these actual awards are taking place. We're here in America, actually talking with a bunch of different outlets that are mostly based here in the U.S., and I feel like they're going to be the ones that are probably going to pick The Last of Us on HBO. And also, let's keep in mind, there's a lot of love for The Last of Us from the Game Awards. Let's be real. I would not be surprised if we get to see, Pedro Pascal show up during the awards, or at least maybe other members of the cast as well for The Last of Us HBO, and then possibly maybe showing a trailer for Season 2. I would not be surprised if that happens. If not, and if the Super Mario Brothers movie wins, I could totally see Miyamoto getting on stage and accepting the award. That would be pretty interesting. Or maybe Doug Bowser. You get big old Doug Bowser there to say hello to everybody. But the rest of those other adaptations, as much as I might like them, I don't think they're winning that. So now we go to Best Multiplayer. Okay, now we're cooking. Now we're cooking here. Okay, now we got some games to talk about. So Best Multiplayer, pretty straightforward. We have Baldur's Gate 3, Diablo 4, Party Animals, Street Fighter 6, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, for me personally, my vote would go to Street Fighter 6. Straight up. Because the multiplayer for that, again, it's a fighting game, a lot of online play, has a lot of great things for its online modes. The lobbies, the ranking system, the matchmaking, all that stuff is good. The only reason why I think something like Diablo 4 or Party Animals is going to win, more than likely, over Baldur's Gate 3 and over Super Mario Bros. Wonder, crazy, right? The reason why I say that is because Diablo 4 was pretty big despite the controversy and stuff that happened with that game. But there's a lot of people that play that game online, especially on PC. Party Animals, I could see because, that's a game that's made for multiplayer as an indie game. But the thing is, it doesn't have the same resonance or brand power compared to these other games. Now, in this category too, I can say that maybe there'll be some recency bias where Super Mario Bros. Wonder would win this because it's got the 4-player co-op. But again, my personal pick would be Street Fighter 6. I don't think Baldur's Gate 3 wins this category, but I do think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to win other categories because they're nominated a lot in the Game Awards this year. But I don't think that it's going to win Best Multiplayer because I don't really see a lot of people playing that game multiplayer. I see a lot of people playing that game alone because of the nature of that game being an RPG. But if Street Fighter 6 doesn't get it, I could totally see Diablo 6 getting this. So next category, we got Best Sports and Racing. Now, this one I think also feels like a layup, like a slam dunk because of the games that are listed here. We got EA Sports FC 24, which is football or soccer, F1 23, Forza Motorsport, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged, and the Crew Motorfest. I think Forza is taking this for free. Forza Motorsport is taking this easily. Because I feel like, compared to these other games, with maybe the exception of EA Sports FC 24, Forza has the bigger fan base compared to all these other games. Even though I know some people like the Crew, maybe some people like F1, but I would say Forza is probably the bigger one with the bigger brand power. And I feel like, again, if they win that category like that, they could do a whole bunch of stuff at the Game Awards. So that, to me, feels like a layup. So Best Sim and Strategy. Okay, Best Sim and Strategy. We got a couple different games in here. We got Advance Wars 1 and 2, Reboot Camp, Cities Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4. I think it's going to come down to either Fire Emblem Engage or Pikmin 4. More than likely, because I think a lot of people know Pikmin. A lot of people picked up Pikmin for the Nintendo Switch in comparison to some of these other games. And I know that City Skylines and Company of Heroes, they're big on PC. I get it. Now, Advance Wars 1 and 2, I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about it. I know that those that played it liked it, and they said it was pretty darn good. But if I'm being realistic here of like who has a real shot at winning these awards or winning this category, I would say Pikmin 4. That would be for me, or Fire Emblem Engage. And the only reason why I say Fire Emblem Engage is because it's been out a little bit longer. But Pikmin 4 seems like the one that I think that people would pick up, or would actually pick as the winner for that. So now we go to Best Family. Best Family Game. Okay, we got a couple interesting picks, but I think this is also another one that's like a slam dunk. We got Disney Illusion Island. We got Party Animals, Pikmin 4, Sonic Superstars, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I think Super Mario Bros. Wonder takes this. I like Sonic. I definitely, I haven't gotten a chance to pick up Sonic Superstars, but I like Sonic Superstars from what I've seen of it. I think Pikmin 4 is good, you know, but as far as family game, Mario's got the pretty easy up with this, more than likely. And Disney Illusion Island apparently is really good. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Rayman games that had the 4-player co-op, those platformers like that. But still, I think Super Mario Brothers Wonder takes this for free. So then we go to Best Fighting Game. Now, this is where things are going to get rocky because we saw what happened at the Golden Joysticks and people were pretty upset. But here's the nominees for Best Fighting Game, right? We got God of Rock, which, you know, honestly, I don't think that game needs to be on there, but that's there. We got God of Rock. Mortal Kombat 1, makes sense. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, makes sense. Pocket Bravery, never played it. Never heard of it up until now, to be honest with you. And Street Fighter 6. I think Street Fighter 6 takes this. And the only reason why is because I think that most people, despite the recency bias that are going to be voting on these awards from the different outlets, are probably going to pick Street Fighter 6 because of the online multiplayer stuff. More than likely. And also keep in mind, Street Fighter 6 has more content, technically, than Mortal Kombat 1. Like, I really did a comparison when I was thinking about this stuff, and Mortal Kombat 1 has the better story stuff, the better story mode, but Street Fighter 6 has the more quantity of content that's inside of it, because Mortal Kombat 1, once you finish the story mode, you have the online mode, and then you have the invasion stuff, and the invasion stuff I feel like runs out very quick for some people. If you're not into it, you're not going to care about any of that stuff. Now, the other one, too, that I think has a shot, because it's actually pretty darn good, is Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. I just got that game not too long ago. Game Mail Entertainment sent that over to me to play on the channel, and I enjoyed it. I think it was pretty dope. It's gotten some high scores. I think people really dig it. It's much better than the first game, to be honest with you. But if we're being realistic here, I think Street Fighter 6 takes this. I would be shocked if Mortal Kombat 1 wins this, because a lot of people were very upset when Mortal Kombat 1 won Best Multiplayer at the Golden Joysticks, because they felt that Street Fighter 6 had the better multiplayer modes and the better multiplayer design overall. God of Rock, I don't think has a chance of winning. I will be shocked if people vote for that one, because I played it. It's an interesting idea, but I don't think it's on the same level as some of these other games. You know, again, that's just my opinion. So Best RPG. Now, some people were annoyed about this for Best RPG because there's a couple things that are missing. We'll get to it in a second, but Best RPG, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, and Starfield. The biggest missing game out of this category, because there's only 5 games, like there should have been 6, but the biggest one that's missing here is Octopath Traveler 2. A lot of people say that Octopath Traveler 2 deserved to be in this category, and I would argue you should remove Starfield and put Octopath Traveler 2 in here. And the only reason why I say that is because when I played Starfield, it is not as good as a lot of people have been saying. And that comes from me running into game-breaking bugs and a couple other things with it. I understand why some places or why some of the outlets nominated Starfield for this, but I think also at the same time, a lot of those same outlets did not play Octopath Traveler 2. I haven't played it myself, but I've seen enough of it to understand why people would vote for it in this category. But if we're going to be real here, the game that's winning Best RPG this year is going to be Baldur's Gate 3. Hands down. And we'll get into it a little bit more once we get to the Game of the Year category. But I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 is going to win a lot of awards this year because the outlets that voted for this to be nominated are the same outlets that have been championing that game for a while, ever since it came out. And keep in mind, too, that game was in early access since, I believe, 2020. Because I remember reading that from some people saying that, this game's been around for a hot minute. It's been kind of like, sweetening everybody up for quite a long time. So I think there's also just a lot of individuals that love Baldur's Gate and love Dungeons and Dragons in general, but really love Baldur's Gate 3 that are probably going to make that game win a lot of awards this year. And it's a shame too, because I love Final Fantasy 16. That was my game of the year up until I played other games later this year. And I think that a lot of people like Lies of P. I don't like it, but I understand why people get it. And Sea of Stars has been getting a lot of love too, that I feel like has a strong case. But with the absence of Octopath Traveler 2 and the fact that people really love Baldur's Gate, this year, I think that game is going to win Best RPG, which is a shame. It is what it is. Now, Best Action Adventure. This is when we start. Let me take a sip of this coffee. This is when we're going to have a serious talk here. This is when we got a problem, okay? And I want to come out and start saying that I do not blame Jeff Keighley for this, okay? I love Jeff Keighley. He does a lot of great stuff for the Game Awards. There's a lot of stuff that many other people in this industry do not do or do not put the effort into doing. So everything I'm going to say in regards to Best Action Adventure here has nothing to do with him, okay? But we're going to have a real conversation in a second. So Best Action Adventure. Here are the nominees of this category, right? Alan Wake 2, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. There is one big game in here that is clearly missing, and we all know what it is and why. The big game that's missing here, for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, is Hogwarts Legacy. Straight up. Best Action Adventure? Are you kidding me? Like, the only reason why this game was not nominated here, and we all know this, so I'm just going to say it, right? The only reason why Hogwarts Legacy was not nominated in this category is because a lot of the people that were doing the votes for nominations let their own personal stuff get in the way of their objectivity. The only reason why Alan Wake 2 is in here is because of recency bias. Let's be real here. Best Action Adventure Game. I understand that Alan Wake 2 is great. I get it. The same thing also with Resident Evil 4 Remake. Again, I was one of those people that the year that Resident Evil 2 Remake was considered for Game of the Year, I said that game was phenomenal, and it really was. And it deserved to be there. It's not a remaster. It's a remake that almost is basically like a brand new game. Just taking the same subject matter and really remixing it. No problem with that. But if I had to drop one game out of here, specifically because of action adventure, I would either drop Resident Evil 4 or Alan Wake 2 and put in Hogwarts Legacy. Because you cannot tell me that a game that is the second highest selling game of 2023 that got great review scores. If you remove a lot of the people that were just being very disingenuous and were reviewing this game in bad faith, you cannot tell me that that game, Hogwarts Legacy, does not deserve to be nominated in this category specifically. And we're going to get to best musical score or whatnot later, but keep in mind too, because I didn't know this until I read about it, Hogwarts Legacy got nominated for a Grammy. So you mean to tell me that the game that was the second highest selling game this year behind The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, right? That is not considered for this type of category? Are we joking? Like, to me, this screams, and a lot of people might not like me saying this or face the facts, this screams that a lot of the outlets did not want to vote or consider Hogwarts Legacy for nomination in any of these categories because of the nonsense that was going on all around on social media, because a lot of the people were really kind of throwing in all the stuff with J.K. Rowling and not really being objective about the game itself. I feel so bad for for Avalanche Software, for WB Games, because they're getting caught up and getting labeled as the black sheep of the group and really getting dogged by all these outlets and people on social media when they did nothing wrong at all. They really busted their butt, made a phenomenal game that sold a lot of copies. I think it was like 15 or 16 something million copies that were sold and then some, and made really a lot of money. It was like over $1 billion that game made. And it sold almost as much as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's the second highest selling game this year, and no category in the Game Awards is going to nominate this game. This should have been the category that game got considered for. And like I said, the only reason why Alan Wake 2 is on here is because of recency bias. It happens every year with the Game Awards with the different outlets that are voting on these games, because they play a lot of different games throughout the year and they forget about a lot of games earlier in the year. It almost always happens. That's exactly what happened to Octopath Traveler 2. Outside of from the fact that I feel like a lot of outlets and a lot of people did not play that game as much as they probably should have, especially when talking about the best RPGs this year. But with Hogwarts Legacy, I feel like it is solely because a lot of the people are getting too caught up on their own personal stuff and issues and outlook, as opposed to being objective with Hogwarts Legacy. And it's such a damn shame. Now, that all being said, if we have to just put that to the side for a second, even though I think it's egregious that Hogwarts Legacy is not nominated in this category, realistically, who will win in this category for Best Action Adventure out of these nominees? Out of Alan Wake 2, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, or Tears of the Kingdom? I'm telling you right now, Tears of the Kingdom is going to win this category. As much as I like some of these other games more, because again, I didn't play Tears of the Kingdom, but I did watch a lot of it. And I didn't play Tears of the Kingdom specifically because I wasn't a fan of Breath of the Wild. But I understand there's a lot of people that love that style of game, and they love Tears of the Kingdom. Again, it sold 18 plus million copies this year, so you can't ignore that. But if I had to choose the game that was going to win out of these categories, even though I would love for Jedi Survivor to have a shot, I would love for Spider-Man 2 to have a shot, I think Tears of the Kingdom is taking this category. All that being said, with the asterisk of saying that Hogwarts Legacy should have been nominated in this category, a lot of the people that were voting for this, okay, that were choosing the nominees and putting their votes in and stuff, should be ashamed of themselves, because Avalanche Software did not deserve this, did not deserve that, to be completely removed from all these categories from consideration. That's a darn shame. Second highest selling game of the year, and you're just not going to consider it. This is another one, okay? Now we go on to Best Action Game, which is another category you could have considered Hogwarts Legacy for, even though I think it's better suited for Best Action Adventure. But Best Action Game, okay, let's talk about this. We got Armored Core 4, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, Armored Core 6, Dead Island 2, Ghost Runner 2, Hi-Fi Rush, and Remnant 2. Let's be honest here. Some of these games that are on here, even though I like Hi-Fi Rush and I heard a couple different things about Dead Island 2, some of these games like Dead Island 2 really shouldn't even be considered for the best of, because they got pretty mid scores, to be honest with you. I looked on Metacritic at some of these games that were being considered, not just this category, but some of the categories, and some of the ones that are being thrown here are just like mid in comparison to many other games that got much higher scores across the board. But if we're sticking to just this category here, Best Action Game, and I really feel like they're going to win this, is either going to be Ghost Runner 2 or it's going to be Hi-Fi Rush. And I think there's a case for Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, because I know a lot of people that played that game and said a lot of good things about it, but I haven't heard a lot of buzz about it. The ones that I heard the most buzz from were both Hi-Fi Rush specifically and also Ghost Runner 2. I could totally see Hi-Fi Rush taking this, to be honest with you, because that game had a good, like, almost like an underdog story, because it got revealed and then released on Xbox Game Pass. And a lot of people really were trying to like champion it. Even though, again, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it for what I played and stuff. I don't know. It wasn't really like a 9 out of 10 game or an 8 out of 10 game, but it was definitely up there. You know, it was still pretty good. So I totally see Hi-Fi Rush winning that category. So now let's go to Best AR and VR. So this is going to be another probably slam dunk of mid one, more than likely. We don't have a lot of stuff to choose from. You know, granted, if you didn't play a lot of AR or VR games, like if you didn't play a lot on PlayStation VR or Oculus, you probably do not care about this category. But the games that are voted on here or nominated, Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Call of the Mountain, Humanity, Resident Evil Village VR mode, and Synapse. Now, I could totally see both Horizon Call of the Mountain and Resident Evil Village winning this category, specifically because Resident Evil Village horror, I think, does great in virtual reality. I think any sort of virtual reality mode for a horror game is really going to do well, because those are the games I feel like get the most emotional responses from people whenever they play them. I could totally also see an argument for Gran Turismo 7, because Gran Turismo 7 looks gorgeous. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It looks fantastic. And especially in VR, I can imagine. It's like playing Star Wars Squadrons and playing that game in VR. That game looks awesome. I think that Gran Turismo 7 probably looks better, though. Let's be real. And Horizon Call of the Mountain, the only reason why I say that's probably got a shot is because that's, again, a well-known IP. A lot of people that are in the industry love Horizon and they want to champion it. That's just the way it is, even though technically it shouldn't be like that. But a lot of people that did play on PlayStation VR did play Horizon Call of the Mountain and probably didn't play a lot of these other games, if I'm being honest. I know I saw some buzz for Humanity. I didn't really see a lot of buzz for Synapse. So I still say that it's either going to go to Horizon or Resident Evil Village for Best VR game. So next category, Best Mobile Game. Here's another one I feel like that might be a slam dunk. Best Mobile Game. We have a couple different ones I think that have a shot. But let me tell you the nominees. Resident Evil 7 Ever Crisis, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Honkai Star Rail, Monster Hunter Now, and Terra Nil. I think it's going to come down to one of two games. It's either going to be Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis or Honkai Star Rail. Honkai Star Rail is very, very popular. I don't know if you play a lot of mobile games or you're really into the mobile scene, but as far as games that I hear about all the time and probably have the most advertising, it's probably Honkai Star Rail. The only reason why I say that Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis would have a shot at this is because it's Final Fantasy VII. And that has a huge amount of brand awareness. There's a lot of people that I know that just love Final Fantasy VII. They engage with anything like that. It's kind of like in the same way that Kingdom Hearts, even though I don't like the Kingdom Hearts mobile games, there's a lot of people that play it simply because they're Kingdom Hearts fans. And they just dive into it because they want to support it. So it's going to come down to one of those two games, either Honkai Star Rail or Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. If I had to choose, if I had to pick just one, it's going to be Honkai Star Rail for me. I feel like that's the one that, as far as the grip on mobile gaming, that's the game that I hear about all the time. So now we go to Best Indie Debut, or Best Debut Indie Game. Now, this one I did hear, oh no, it's not this one, it's the other category that has a controversy with it, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So, Best Debut Indie Game. Now, I didn't play any of these games, but I hear a couple good things about a few of them here and there. So, the nominees are Cocoon, Dredge, Pizza Tower, Venba, and Viewfinder. I think that from what I've heard from people, like as far as like people that are talking about it, Pizza Tower is more than likely going to win this one because I hear about it a lot more often than I hear about any of these other games. Because again, I've never played any of these, but I've like seen people in the industry mention Pizza Tower more often than not. So now Best Independent Game. I think, is this the one that has the controversy? Let me just double check. Yeah, this is the one that has the controversy. So Best Independent Game. And I'll get into the controversy in a second. But here are the nominees for Best Independent Game, right? Cocoon, Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, and Viewfinder. So the reason why this category has controversy is because Dave the Diver, specifically Mint Rocket, is owned by a much larger corporation that's actually, again, not an independent studio. They're funded by this major company. I forgot the name of the company at the moment because I only heard about it just recently. But I think there's an argument to completely disqualify Dave the Diver because of that. Because when you think indie development studios, you think of a studio that is independently financed by, I guess, like a small team of people, a small group. It doesn't have the financial backings of a major company. And that's always been at the heart of indie game development. Some people might feel a little bit differently, but that's like more of the common thing that I've seen a lot, throughout my years of covering games. So if you excuse that game, okay, or if you put that to the side, out of all these games here, if I had to choose myself, the one that I hear about the most out of these indie games, I would say Sea of Stars would take it. Now, I know a lot of people love Dave the Diver, and a lot of people apparently love Cocoon, but I think that I've heard the most about Sea of Stars. And it's also Sabotage. We know Sabotage from The Messenger, and apparently this game connects directly to The Messenger in certain ways. I have it downloaded on Xbox Game Pass, and I haven't yet gotten a chance to play it, but I've heard a lot of people say great things about it, especially if you like stuff like, I think it's like Chrono Trigger, or a few other games that are very similar, and people apparently really dig it. So now, Best Community Support. This is another category that I feel like might be a slam dunk, but there's a lot of different games in here when it comes to community support. So we got Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2, Final Fantasy 14, and No Man's Sky. Now, every time I see this category every year, I always think it's going to go one way, and it ends up going in a completely unexpected way. And I think it's mostly because of the people that are voting on the games to be the winners that nominate these games, because they support certain like groups or people or whatever else in the industry. For me, if I had to choose the one that I feel has the best community support, like straight up, it's going to be Final Fantasy 14. And I think that comes from the nature of it being an MMO, the constant updates, the constant feedback and interaction with players on there. And again, there's so many people playing it, you have a lot of different people to speak to. So I think Square Enix does a phenomenal job with that game. Have you seen how many expansions Final Fantasy 14 has? Or Final Fantasy 14 A Realm Reborn? It's ridiculous. And in a good way, I should say. Now, who do I think might win it from the people that might actually vote on this? If I have to be real, I think that it's either going to go to No Man's Sky or it's probably going to go to Baldur's Gate. I don't think that Baldur's Gate should win this one, even though I know they've had updates and they've had all these other things here and there. And I still don't think that No Man's Sky should win this. I think in one of the other categories in previous years or in one of the other award shows, No Man's Sky got this type of award, Best Community Support. And it's because they've changed up the game so many times and they've updated so many times. But I still feel that Final Fantasy 14 is the better example of that. Destiny 2 is in here, but I don't think it's going to win, to be honest with you. Maybe because of the recent controversies and the recent stuff that a lot of people are pissed off at them for many different reasons. And you could argue Cyberpunk, But as in comparison to these other games, I don't think it has the best community support. That game has changed a lot. I still think that it's got a lot of issues, but when it comes to community support, I think Final Fantasy XIV is the one that I would choose, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the one that wins. So best ongoing game. Now, this is another one that I feel very similar to that, because look at the games that we got on here. We have Apex Legends, Cyberpunk 2077, Final Fantasy XIV, Fortnite, and Genshin Impact. I think it gets really tough to choose in this category, but I feel very similar to the previous one. I think Final Fantasy XIV does a great job with all the great content, the constant updates, the new stuff that people could come back to and explore. But look at some of these other games. Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact is huge. And then even bigger than that is Fortnite. Fortnite has the most ridiculous collaborations over the last, how long has this game been around? Close to a decade? If not, maybe just a little bit less than that. It's insane. I think that Fortnite should win this, to be honest with you, but I think it's probably going to go to Genshin Impact or it's going to go to Final Fantasy XIV. I will be shocked if Cyberpunk 2077 wins this, because in comparison to these other games that have been going on strong for a while, I don't think Cyberpunk has any sort of prayer against it. But again, some of these awards, with the way that some of these people vote for some of these games, usually is based on games they haven't played, or it's because they support specifically one type of game, which is really not supposed to be like that. You should have the people voting on the categories with the games that they've played the most or that they understand the most as far as the scene and the genre, etc. So if Cyberpunk 2077 wins this category, I will be very shocked. I still think it should go to Fortnite when it comes to best ongoing game and the stuff that it's done. So now we go to games for impact. This is another category that I feel like people really, they're apathetic about it because it's good-natured. It's got a good intention, but a lot of people just have a bad outlook on it. I feel like this is more for the industry, a little bit of patting on the back more than it is for the actual messaging as far as, being a game for impact, for positive change or whatever. It's just got that whole kind of vibe to it. It's got that kind of label on it. But the games that are nominated on here, A Space for the Unbound, Chance for Senar, Goodbye Volcano High, Chaya, I think that's how you pronounce it, Chaya, Terra Nil, and Venba. I haven't played any of these games, so I can't really say which one's going to take it. They all look interesting as far as their visuals are concerned, but I can't really give a judgment on that because I've never played any of those games. So innovation and accessibility. This is another one that I feel like is also really kind of for the industry, not so much for the fans, because again, accessibility and was it all different types of conversations related to that is really conversations amongst both media people and industry people, not so much amongst the fans, because I think that the majority of fans out there, even if they were someone that cares about that stuff, the majority of people don't really get into this conversation. I feel like, again, it's really a social media convo amongst industry people. But the games that are considered, okay, we have Diablo 4, Forza Motorsport 4, Hi-Fi Rush, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, and Street Fighter 6. Now, as far as innovation and accessibility, this isn't about making a game have some sort of representation for those that might be disabled or those that might need more help with accessibility. I think this is the way that you change the way that people play games or use technology to make things a little bit different when it comes to changing games. So that can mean having certain filters so people can see, having other control SKUs for people to actually be able to play the game, stuff like that. I think the one that probably had the biggest splash with that because of the nature of the scene, which is specifically the fighting game scene, would probably be Street Fighter 6 for me, if I had to choose. Because there's other things here and there for various features that you could say about every single one of these games. Diablo 4, Forza, Hi-Fi Rush, Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6, all these games have different things in their options to do that. But when you look at I hear about the stories and I see the different videos about certain players being able to control games by, having someone play that's blind. That was a big thing in, I believe during EVO, that was playing Street Fighter 6, stuff like that. I feel okay, that's the type of stuff that makes more sense for a category like this. So if I had to choose one, it would be Street Fighter 6 to win this one. Best performance. Now we start getting to the bigger awards. Okay, these are where things are going to get a little hectic, right? So, best performance. So this includes both, all types of actors or voice actors for multiple games, right? So the nominees are Ben Starr for Final Fantasy XVI, Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Idris Elba for Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Melly Liberd for Alan Wake 2, Neil Newbon for Baldur's Gate 3, and Yuri Lowenthal for Marvel Spider-Man 2. So Ben Starr played Clive. Clive over in Final Fantasy 16. Cameron played Cal Kestis in Jedi Survivor. Idris Elba played the character from the new DLC for Phantom Liberty in Cyberpunk. Melanie Laborde, I think, played the detective in Alan Wake 2. Again, I didn't play Alan Wake 2, but I think that's her character or one of the officers that interacts with Alan Wake. Neil Newbon played, was it the Vampire in Baldur's Gate 3? And Yuri played Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. So all these actors or voice actors all did great jobs in their respective games. But if I had to choose the one that's going to win this category, more than likely, even though I think that in some cases some of these voice actors did better than others, I have a strong feeling that Neil Newbon's going to win for Baldur's Gate 3. And that's only because, even though I know he did a great job with his voice acting, it's only because I think that the majority of people that are voting on these awards are going to vote in favor of Baldur's Gate 3 winning awards. That's the only reason why I think he's going to win this. Because let's be real here. I think Ben Starr did a fantastic job as Clive. He won at the Golden Joystick Awards for his performance as Clive in Final Fantasy 16 recently. So you could say that maybe he'll take it for this as well. But again, knowing who and what outlets are voting on the Game Awards, they've always been like this for years, I have a strong feeling they're going to vote for the Baldur's Gate 3 voice actor. Even though I love Cameron as Cal Kestis in Jedi Survivor, I think that Yuri did a fantastic job as Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. I think all these voice actors did a fantastic job, but I think it's going to come down to stuff like that a lot of these voters or a lot of these outlets that are voting, they're going to give it to the games that they've been just rah-rahing for the longest time. And I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 is going to take that, even though I think Ben should probably win that. So best audio design. Now, okay, this is when I go back to the nonsense that we were talking about earlier, where a game like Hogwarts Legacy should have been considered for this. Okay, for best audio design, and the next category we're going to get into afterwards. Okay, but the nominees for best audio design, okay, is Alan Wake 2, Dead Space, the remake, Hi-Fi Rush, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and Resident Evil 4. I always feel that the horror game genre or horror games in general almost always have a leg up when it comes to sound design for best audio design in general, because when you really think about it, this isn't about music. This is about like the sound that you hear from like, you know, various environmental stuff, various characters or creatures you might run into. And with a horror game, in order to make someone feel scared or feel afraid, that has to be like top notch. That has to be all the way up there as far as quality. And I feel like Dead Space might take this, even though I know it's a remake. And you could argue also Resident Evil 4 too. I feel like people are going to give this to Dead Space. And here's the thing, all these games that are mentioned, granted I didn't play Alan Wake 2, but from what I've seen from it in videos and stuff, they all have fantastic audio design. Spider-Man 2 especially, between the city, like swinging through all of New York City, all the different like crazy stuff that you run into, fantastic. Hi-Fi Rush I think is more about the music though, when it comes to audio design. And you can make an argument that that's part of that whole experience as far as like, it's not necessarily the sound of the environments, it's the sound of the vibe and the musical scores that you're hearing that help make that game what it is. But still, if I had to choose which one should probably win or probably will most likely win, it's going to be Dead Space. Because the freaking sound design in Dead Space is crazy if you haven't played it yet. So best musical score or best music and score. Again, I go back to the music of Hogwarts Legacy. Why wasn't it considered in this category if over at the Grammys it was nominated for a Grammy for this very same category? Okay, I am just saying, okay? Now, the nominees that they have in here for best song, best licensed soundtrack, okay? We have Alan Wake 2, okay? We have Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Hi-Fi Rush, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Every single one of these games all have fantastic soundtracks. I still think that Hogwarts Legacy should have been considered in this as well. They definitely should have been considered in this. And I also think that Star Wars Jedi Survivor should have been considered in this as well because of the music that is in that game. But out of these categories, if we're just sticking with these nominees in here, my personal pick would be Final Fantasy 16. If you played Final Fantasy 16 and you listen to that soundtrack, you realize how epic and awesome that is. Like, especially in some of the boss battles. Like that music gets you hype. That music is just, that music helps make some of those moments like absolutely epic. And I think that that's a nature of the series with Final Fantasy in general, but Final Fantasy 16, Masayoshi Soken, yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Masayoshi Soken, he was cooking in the lab when he was making that music. Now, which one do I think is going to win this though? that's an entirely different case. I have a strong feeling that this one again is going to go to Baldur's Gate because of that song Down Down by the River. I think I don't think the song is that great. I understand why people like it. I don't think it's as good, and definitely a lot of the music in Baldur's Gate I don't think is as good as what was going on with Final Fantasy 16. But I feel like that's another one that people are going to represent Baldur's Gate 3 on. And here's the other argument too. I think the other one that really should probably win this category is Hi-Fi Rush, because that entire game is music. That entire game has everything centered around the idea and the concept and the vibe that has to deal with music. And again, if I had to really choose my two picks for this, it would be Final Fantasy 16, and if that one doesn't get it, it should be Hi-Fi Rush. But I have a strong feeling that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to take this. And that's not to say that the music in Tears of the Kingdom is bad, because I heard some of the music in Tears of the Kingdom, and it's fantastic. It's great. It really works for some of the gameplay stuff that goes on with that game. You can argue probably the same thing about Alan Wake 2. But as far as those three games are concerned, I think that's what's probably going to happen with this. I will be shocked if something like Tears of the Kingdom wins this category, especially with Hi-Fi Rush in there, because I feel like that's something that everybody will look at this and be like, yo, really? I still think Final Fantasy 16 is my pick. That's my pick for the best music, because that music is awesome. Music is fantastic. So best art direction. Now we're really starting to get red hot with these categories, right? So this is another one that I feel like best art direction, Hogwarts Legacy should have been considered. Rendering the entirety of Hogwarts and Hogsmeade in comparison to some of these other games that have done some of this stuff, why wasn't it considered? But I digress, okay? We got the nominees for this one, best art direction. We got Alan Wake 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So if we're just sticking with these nominees, which one do I think is probably going to win best art design? More than likely, or art direction? I think there's a strong case for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, because Super Mario Bros. Wonder looks fantastic. It's colorful, it's bright, it's whimsical, it's a lot of fun. It's like you get those really cozy vibes from Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I think that some people could also argue the same thing about Hi-Fi Rush, with it being kind of like this cel-shaded anime-esque type of vibe that works with the music. It's got a whole rock-like style to it that's like almost punk in a sense. It's really good overall. Now, I think that some people could also argue for Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think that Tears of the Kingdom is better as far as overall art direction in comparison to Hi-Fi Rush and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, especially with something new and interesting for this year, because Tears of the Kingdom is basically more Breath of the Wild. That's exactly what Breath of the Wild looked like, just a little bit more polished. At least that's from what I've seen. You could go look at the two games side by side, and I think there's an argument to tell that you might not be able to tell which is which in some cases, if you just didn't have the names of the titles in front of you. But the same thing also for Alan Wake 2. I also feel like Alan Wake 2 has a lot of recency bias going on for it, that people are considering it for this. Now, I know that there's some crazy visuals in Alan Wake 2, but if we're going to be real here, the best art direction that really sticks out, I feel like, is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, Lies of P, to me, is just more Soul stuff, because it's just, I understand it looks good. It's got some crazy creatures with the puppets and all this other stuff, but I look at that and I just see more of the Souls game stuff. It's not anything that really jumps out to me as well or as much as in comparison to some of these other games. So for me, my pick is going to be Super Mario Bros. Wonder, at least my prediction, but it could change. It could be different. Now, Best Narrative, okay? Best Narrative is another game that I feel like is going to be really, really competitive. So the nominees for Best Narrative, we got Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, Final Fantasy 16, and Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I really don't think that Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty should be considered here, because that's an expansion. That's not Best Narrative of a full game. Like, I understand why people have picked it, but I don't think it should be there, to be honest with you. Now, if I had a choice of which one is probably going to win this, it's probably going to, again, be Baldur's Gate 3 for Best Narrative. For storytelling and narrative development in a game, easily. A lot of places are going to vote for that. I love the story of Spider-Man 2. I think it was great. The story of Final Fantasy 16, I think, is also great too. A lot of people had issues with the story, and I didn't understand why they thought that the story was bad, because I did not think so. I didn't think that it was bad at all. I think there's an argument to be made about these games specifically of which one has the better narrative. I think, yeah, but I don't think that Final Fantasy 16 had a bad story at all. Alan Wake 2, again, I haven't played it, so I don't know the story of it. So that could also be a contender there. I know that a lot of people really like the story of the first Alan Wake. And apparently Alan Wake 2 and Control really tie in together in some ways. Like there's references and stuff. So those Remedy games are kind of, very close and in relation to each other. But if I had to choose which one is more than likely going to win this, it's going to be Baldur's Gate 3. Just on the nature of it being an RPG, and an RPG that's all Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and all the permutations of what you could do in that game, I feel like that's going to be the one that takes the best narrative. So now, the penultimate game, best game direction, okay? Best game direction is the second to last award for the Game Awards 2023. So there's a couple different different nominees that I feel like have a real shot at winning this, more than likely. So again, we're really deep into this whole discussion about the Game Awards. Let me know your thoughts on all the winners that you think might take the games or might take the awards this year in the comment section down below. Do you agree with me or disagree with me with some of my statements? Talk to me about that down below in the comments. So let's do these final 2 awards here, right? Best game direction. The nominees are Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'll tell you right now, for me personally, I think best direction will have to go to Spider-Man 2. Because that story, the way that it's told, the way that it kind of seamlessly, like really blends a lot of different gameplay with the narrative that's going on and stuff. I really enjoyed that game as far as the way that it was directed, everything about it overall. I felt like really worked together well. A lot of people would say Baldur's Gate 3, again, being an RPG, being a Dungeons & Dragons RPG with so many permutations and things you can do. There's an argument there. Same thing for Alan Wake 2. A lot of people that did play that game would really say that it's a really good, solid story that's well directed. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I don't know if it's best direction would really be the best spot for this one. I feel like this is kind of like maybe a Nintendo pick more than anything else besides The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, because when I look at Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I don't think best direction from that what I've seen of that game. Like, I understand direction for a game really means a bunch of different things. I would say that the better pick would be The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom because of the nature of that game and the way that it has its cutscenes and everything else. But my pick, again, is going to be probably more than likely, it's going to be taken by Baldur's Gate 3. More than likely. Again, you have to understand the outlets and the people that are voting on this game really love Baldur's Gate 3 that are voting on these awards. They really love this game. So I have a strong feeling that all these other games are kind of going to be SOL. Even though my personal pick is Marvel Spider-Man 2, because I think that game is fantastic the way that it's directed overall. So now we come to the big one. The big award of the event this year, the Game of the Year for 2023. I had to take a big extra gulp of that coffee there because this is going to be another one that I feel like is very competitive and is probably going to have controversy. It's probably going to have a lot of people having all their opinions and getting upset on social media. It's going to be wild out here on these streets. So here is the nominees for Game of the Year, right? There's a number of them, okay? So we got Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. 2 of these games, in my opinion, shouldn't even really be on this list for Game of the Year. I don't think that they're the best games of the year, personally. Okay, that again, that's just a personal statement. That might not be indicative of what the reality is when it comes to quality, right? So my personal pick for Game of the Year that I feel should win Game of the Year should be Spider-Man 2. I feel like that game did phenomenal. It did a really big splash on PlayStation 5, being limited to just one platform. I thought that game was great. It was fun. It was interesting. A lot of the stuff that they were doing with the fast travel, the stuff between both Spider-Men, as well as also just a lot of the other interesting narrative stuff with it. I just feel like that to me is a AAA quality game that is representative of like some of the best that you could get from this year. Okay, now, what do I think is going to happen? I mean, you've already been hearing me for quite a while now talking about all these awards. You already know where I'm going with this. I have a strong feeling that people that are voting on these games, that the outlets that are casting their vote, they're going to vote for Baldur's Gate 3. I will be shocked if they vote for Alan Wake 2. But I think that they're going to give it to Baldur's Gate 3 without question. And that sucks because I feel that Marvel Spider-Man 2 really is the game that was the best one that I played this year. Hands down. Resident Evil 4, even though I think that it was good, and it was interesting, I don't think it was as good as any of these other games. And again, I haven't spent as much time with it compared to other people. Definitely not as much time as I spent with the Resident Evil 2 remake. I still feel like as good as Resident Evil 4 is, some of these other games are just that much more better as far as an experience is concerned, as far as being a AAA gaming experience that's the best of the best this year. Because I heard people really praising Resident Evil 4, but not as much as they had the conversation going about some of these other games, especially about Spider-Man 2, about Baldur's Gate, even now with Alan Wake 2. But I find that Alan Wake 2 is weird here because this is recency bias to me. This game literally just came out, and it's like right at the tail end of the cutoff date for the Game Awards. And in comparison to some of these other games, like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I think that it could be considered strictly on gameplay alone, I think. But for a lot of people, that's not enough because Super Mario Bros. Wonder is more 2D Mario, which is great. I love 2D Mario. But when you really think about the best of this year, when you take everything else into account and what some of these other games were bringing to the table, I don't think Mario Brothers Wonder is really the best game this year. And The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I really feel that a lot of this has to do with Zelda fandom. A lot of this has to do with people that really like the Breath of the Wild style of Zelda. And I get it, there's some interesting things going on with it. But when you really think about this, and you really observe all these games that were going on this year, Tears of the Kingdom is more Breath of the Wild. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the best of this year, like you were not getting the fast travel stuff that you got in Marvel Spider-Man 2, how seamless and how like quick it was and smooth it was compared to what you had with Tears of the Kingdom. Like fast traveling Tears of the Kingdom is nowhere near what was going on with Marvel Spider-Man 2. That fast travel thing, and I know it sounds like a stupid thing to bring up, but it's really a big deal when you look at how it's done and like what it means for games that could be done or made for the PlayStation 5. That's a big freaking deal. And you take it for granted unless you really take a moment to really look at it and really feel like what's going on with that game. I'm telling you, it's that awesome. Now, the other counter argument for this with Baldur's Gate 3 is because Baldur's Gate 3 is so big, it has so many permutations going on with it as far as story and the outcomes and the consequences of things that you could do. That's the main reason why I feel like many people that are voting on these awards, outside of just the bias of just supporting this game blindly, are going to vote for Baldur's Gate 3. My personal reason why I don't think Baldur's Gate 3 is the best of this year is because when I played it on PC. Okay, I ran into some huge game-breaking bugs with that game. Once you have a game-breaking bug, in my own experience like that, I don't think you could be really considered for Game of the Year. I feel like that's such a big impact to the experience that a player has that stands out in a negative way, that puts other games that I did not have that experience with over it. When I played Marvel Spider-Man 2, right, I played it from the day that it released. I played it straight through for like 2 days, just going through the main story and doing all the stuff. And eventually I platinumed that game. You know, I didn't have one bad experience with Spider-Man 2. It wasn't until after I platinumed the game, or right when I platinumed the game, when there was like one bug that stood out to me. So that means that like out of that 18 to 20 something hours that I played, I had a smooth, awesome experience. With Baldur's Gate 3, I spent a lot more time playing it for many different reasons, because I was also writing about it too. I almost close to like 40 plus hours. And within that time, I had a number of game-breaking bugs. Like there was the bug that I even talked about with Baldur's Gate 3, where I had to reset my game multiple times because I kept running into this game-breaking bug that would freeze my screen on a point when I'm trying to do battle, and it's like if I was in a cutscene and I couldn't do anything. That happened multiple times, and not just in that one spot. There was other instances where I had bad bugs and things that went down. I also feel, too, when you look at all these games, and I go back to Baldur's Gate 3 here specifically, Baldur's Gate 3 is not a game that I feel the masses of people really resonate with in comparison. And it has nothing to do with the quality of what that style of game is, because really it's this top-down, turn-based, almost turn-based like Dungeons and Dragons RPG style with its combat. And for some people, they like that. I know a lot of people like Dungeons and Dragons, especially in the games media. There's a number of individuals that just love D&D, and that's fine. But when you really think about the best of the year, that represents the best of what can be done this year, that's like phenomenal, right? I think that mass appeal with games that people could easily get into and really enjoy, like that is a huge part of that equation. So out of all these games, I feel like the games that had the best of that is Marvel Spider-Man 2, is Resident Evil 4, is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I would even argue Alan Wake 2 and Tears of the Kingdom. Like all those other games, with the exception of Baldur's Gate 3, I feel like you could jump into and really start to understand things and play through the game in a much more easier fashion than you could with Baldur's Gate. I feel like there's so many things going on with Baldur's Gate that could be like so overwhelming for some people. Not me, because I was able to play it for so long, but I feel like if people had a choice, they would pick one of those other games over Baldur's Gate 3. And again, it doesn't take away from the quality of stuff that Larian Studios put into it. I do really feel like, though, that out of all the games I played this year, Spider-Man 2 was probably the one that really stood out to me the most, for all the reasons that I've listed already. Now, let's be real here. I say those things too, but there's a couple of games that did not get considered into this category that I really feel should have been considered in this category. And I think it sucks because a lot of the stuff comes from recency bias, and also other things are personal things from the people that are voting on the Game Awards for these outlets. Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Alan Wake 2, I feel like if they weren't in here, that one of those spots would have gone to Final Fantasy 16. Because I feel like a lot of people really love Final Fantasy 16. And I feel like there's a number of people in the media that had like some sort of chip on their shoulder about it for a number of reasons when that game came out. And I don't think that was fair to the game. So I feel like that game, as good as it was and as well as it sold, I feel like kind of got snubbed here. The other one that people bring up, and I think this is where me and them kind of like don't agree on this. A lot of people would bring up Starfield as that should have been considered for Game of the Year. I don't agree with that, because that's another game that I feel like had major issues, a lot of bugs. You know, a lot of people give these excuses to Starfield and to Bethesda games in general for their bugs, because they say they're big games, they have all these like things going on with it. But it's like, listen, if I run into a game-breaking bug, that's a problem. That impacts my experience overall. With some of these other games on this list, I didn't have an issue with. I didn't have that issue with Marvel Spider-Man 2, not once. And you mean to tell me that a game that has that should also be considered Game of the Year? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And I think also the review scores for Starfield just weren't as high as people were thinking that it was going to be. A lot of people might like the game for what it is, but it still has major problems. So I don't think that should be considered in the Game of the Year conversation. So as it stands right now, with Game of the Year 2023 for the Game Awards, I feel that Marvel Spider-Man 2 should win this, but it's probably not. They're more than likely the outlets are going to vote for Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that kind of sucks, because there's all these other factors that get thrown into it and things from what I've seen, but I still feel that Marvel Spider-Man 2 should win this. Either way, those are my thoughts about all the nominees and my predictions for the Game of the Year, for the 2023 nominees of the Game Awards for this year. And it's going to be dope, man. It's going to be fun watching the show. Again, I can't wait to see what Jeff Keighley brings to it. There's going to be a lot of world premieres, which should be dope. Hopefully we get some good trailers. I feel like we're going to get some trailers for games that we know are coming. Like, I think we're going to see the Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer at the Game Awards. That I would not be surprised if we see that there, because of what they announced recently. Rockstar said on their social media. It's like the timing just matches up too well. And I feel like Jeff knows this. He's probably already had conversations with Rockstar. If not, I'll be very surprised. Like, if the Game Awards go on and we don't get a GTA 6 trailer, but then it comes out the next day, that'll be hilarious. Or it comes out the day before, that will be really funny. But I think we're going to get some good world premieres, you know, in the midst of all these different awards that get handed on and the winners get picked and stuff. So I think there'll definitely be controversy. I definitely think there'll be a lot of conversations and debates on who the winners will be and all this other stuff. But those are all my thoughts. I know this was a long-winded episode, and this is just going to be focused just on the Game Awards itself. But tell me some of your thoughts about all the winners, all the nominees, about the Game Awards this year in the comment section down below. Make sure that you leave a like on this video as well when you guys can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's a lot of great content, a lot of good Let's Plays, a lot of good YouTube shorts that I've been putting up on the channel. All that stuff that I know you guys will enjoy. Make sure you go follow me on all my social media, on Twitter at JakeJamesLugo if you haven't already. Go follow me on Instagram at JakeJamesLugo. I'm posting up on there almost every day. Go follow me on TikTok at JakeJamesLugo on TikTok, where literally I'm posting multiple times every single day about games and stuff over on TikTok. And also I'm on Threads at JakeJamesLugo. I'm on Threads as well. So go check out all that stuff. There'll be links in the description box below. And with that being said, I will talk to all of you again very soon. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.